This happened just last week. I'm Mark, 34, a freelance journalist living in a quiet suburb. I moved here hoping for some peace after my recent divorce. It's a normal neighborhood, with modest homes and white picket fences. I thought it would be the perfect place to get my career back on track. I never expected anything strange would happen here. Late last Tuesday, I saw a weather report about a thick fog rolling into our area. I didn't think much of it. After all, fog isn't that unusual, right? I figured I could turn this into a story. The way it was presented sounded ominous, but I shrugged it off. Maybe I was just looking for something to write about. I've never stopped thinking about that night. As the fog rolled in, it got thicker each evening. I looked out my window, and it was like staring into a wall of gray. It felt like I was in some sort of strange dream. Each day, I saw more neighbors come out to look, their faces blank. Maybe they were just curious, but something didn't sit right. I heard noises too, strange ones, not normal sounds that come with fog. Maybe it was just the wind? I wasn't sure. I had to admit it. I was starting to feel uneasy. Then one night, around midnight, I heard a tapping. My heart raced as I glanced outside. There were people walking in the fog. No, wandering. I felt cold all of a sudden. They seemed lost, almost dazed. I didn't know if I should say something or stay where I was. I think I knew most of them, but their faces blurred in the mist. I also noticed the power flickering in and out. My lights struggled against the gloom, and I felt a creeping anxiety settle over me. Maybe that was just a storm? I don't know. The town was suddenly full of whispers and vague visions. I told myself to focus on my work, but how could I? The fog was thick, and the air seemed heavier each day. As the week wore on, the neighbors were acting weirder. I went to check on Mrs. Yates, the sweet old lady who lived next door, and when I knocked on her door, she didn't answer. I waited about 10 minutes, and then I heard that tapping again, but this time it was coming from her yard. I felt a chill. I called out her name, but the fog swallowed my words. Then I saw her, just standing there staring at nothing. I called her again, louder this time. She turned her head slowly, but her eyes were vacant. I didn't know what to make of it, so I backed away, my heart pounding in my chest. I thought about going home, but the fog felt like it was closing in on me. I wanted to get out of there, but something made me stay. I watched her for a moment longer, hoping she would say something, but she didn't. Then, last night, I saw a shadow moving in the fog. I turned to look, but there was no one there. Now I sit here, thinking about it all. I don't know what's going on. Was it just the fog, or was there something more to it? The questions gnaw at me. The weather seems so strange, but maybe it's something I just don't understand. I have no answers. I just want to feel safe again. The next day, I decided I needed to do something. I couldn't just sit and let the fog drive me mad. I grabbed my coat and stepped outside. The air was thick, wrapping around me like a heavy blanket. I made my way down the street, heart thumping a little harder than usual. I wanted to check on the other neighbors, see if they were acting as strangely as Mrs. Yates. The fog had reached an unsettling level. Visibility was almost zero, and the houses loomed like shadowy giants. I called out to a few of my neighbors, but the silence swallowed my voice. I couldn't see anyone. The street felt empty, but I sensed movement just out of reach, something shifting in the peripheral haze. I walked to the Edwards house, hoping to find them home. They had 2 kids and often played outside. I knocked, waited, and knocked again. No answer. It was quiet, too quiet. I turned to leave, but then I heard it, the tapping sound again. It was louder now, a rhythmic noise coming from the direction of the park. My instincts screamed at me to get back indoors, but curiosity pulled me closer. I followed the sound, each step feeling heavier, each breath more labored. The park was just ahead, half hidden by the fog. I hesitated at the entrance, squinting to see through the gray. That's when I saw it. 2 figures standing beneath a streetlight, their backs turned to me. I felt a rush of adrenaline. They were motionless, almost like they were waiting for something. I called out, but the fog swallowed my words once more. I crept closer, trying to get a better look. As I approached, the figures turned slowly, and my heart sank. It was the Edwards, Lisa and Tom, staring blankly into the thickening mist. I called their names again, louder this time, but nothing happened. It was as if the fog had taken their voices too. Panic coursed through me. I took a step back, then another. That's when I noticed something glinting on the ground near their feet. I crouched down, squinting through the fog, and my pulse quickened as I realized what it was. A small, shiny object, half covered in dirt. I reached for it, my fingers trembling slightly. It was a locket, familiar and old. I'd seen this before, once on Mrs. Yates and another time on Lisa. Suddenly, I heard a rustling from deeper in the fog. The figures turned slightly, as if something had caught their attention. My breath caught in my throat. I wanted to run, but something held me there, frozen. I could feel eyes on me, though I couldn't see anyone. Then everything went dark as the streetlight flickered and died. I stumbled back, my heart pounding in my chest. Shadows shifted around me. I could almost hear whispers brushing past me like a cold wind. I clenched the locket tightly, knowing I had to get out of there. But as I turned to leave, I realized I wasn't alone. Someone was behind me. I froze, paralyzed by fear. A presence hovered behind me, and I could feel the tension in the air. I slowly turned, the fog wrapping around me, thick and suffocating. A shadow emerged from the gray, taking form as it stepped closer. It was a man, his features obscured by the mist. I couldn't make out his expression, but the way he moved felt intentional, almost too calculated. There was something off about him. He, too, wore a locket, glinting faintly in the dim light. Memories flickered at the edges of my mind, dark and unsettling. I opened my mouth to speak, but no words came out. "Help us!" he whispered, his voice barely rising above the rustling of the fog. It was a hollow sound, filled with urgency, yet devoid of life. I took a step back, my instincts screaming at me to run. Who are you?" I managed to croak, my throat dry. He just stared at me, his eyes wide and unblinking, almost like the Edwards. "Help us," he repeated, and I noticed his hands were trembling. It was as if he was fighting against something inside him. The locket around his neck swung slightly, and something inside me twisted. I dropped my gaze from his unsettling stare to the locket on the ground, my hand still clenching the other one tightly. "What do you want?" I blurted out, desperation tinging my voice. "Get the locket. The locket is key." There was a fierce intensity in his tone, but the way he spoke lacked clarity. I didn't understand what he meant. Just then, I heard the tapping noise again, sharper now, reverberating through the silence. It felt closer, more pronounced. The man flinched, his expression shifting to one of panic. "You need to go! They're coming!" Before I could comprehend what he meant, he moved to step back into the fog, nearly disappearing in the haze. My body reacted on instinct, and I surged forward, desperate to catch him, to hold on to the last shreds of sanity in this madness. "Wait! Don't go!" I called out, but he was gone, vanishing into the swirling mist. I stumbled backward, only to almost trip on the locket at my feet. My heart raced as I scooped it up. The cold metal was oddly heavy in my hand, as though it carried the weight of the 2 lives lost. A sudden rush of clarity hit me. This wasn't just a mystery anymore. It felt like a warning. Then, without warning, a shadow loomed from the fog ahead. The tapping intensified, echoing all around. I turned to run, but the path was swallowed in darkness. As I sprinted toward what I hoped was safety, the whispers returned, calling out to me, beckoning me back. I couldn't shake the feeling that everything hinged on that locket. I had to figure out why it held such power. But first, I needed to survive this night. I ran, my feet pounding against the wet earth, slick and uneven. The tapping had morphed into something more like a drumbeat, a constant reminder that I was not alone in this fog. Each sound made me dart left and right, searching for shadows that flickered just out of reach. I could barely see a foot in front of me, and every instinct screamed that something was following. I finally stumbled into a clearing, the fog slightly less dense here. I took a moment to catch my breath, the bitter taste of panic lingering like bile in my throat. I clutched the locket tightly, its cold surface grounding me amid my spiraling thoughts. Then, the memories began to resurface. Images darted through my mind, the Edwards, their faces, their feigned smiles. I hadn't seen them in weeks. They were my neighbors, but I had no idea how intertwined our lives had become. What had they known? And why was their disappearance now haunting me? The whispers in the air grew louder, threading through the fog. I had to know if it was connected to the man. I looked down at the locket again, trying to see if there was anything unique about this one compared to the first. I noticed that where the metal was once shiny, it now held a duller patina. It seemed to pulse with a strange energy, almost alive in my hand. I heard the tapping again, louder this time, closer. My heart raced as I turned toward the sound, squinting through the haze. Suddenly, a figure emerged, a woman this time. She appeared as if she were wading through the fog, her features obscured, but her locket glinting in the faint light. I tried to scream, but the words caught in my throat. "Help me!" she cried, her voice sharp and fragmented, like glass breaking. "Who are you?" I stammered back, frozen in place. "I'm trapped!" Her outstretched hand trembled as she pointed behind her. "They're coming!" Before I could ask what she meant, shapes darted behind her, just visible in the fog. They moved with intent, fluid and stealthy. A chill ran down my spine. I didn't want to stand there and find out what they were. "Run!" I shouted, turning back to find an escape route, but the way I had come was swallowed by the creeping darkness. Panic surged through me again. I had to choose. In the midst of my panic, I spotted a faint light flickering in the distance. There seemed to be a small house at the edge of the clearing, the last place I could turn. I sprinted toward it, the whispers in the fog turning into an angry chorus behind me. But as I reached the door, I froze. A new fear gripped me. What if whoever was inside was part of all this? I glanced back, ready to turn and fight whatever was pursuing me, when everything went dark in a sudden sweep of the fog. A rush of noise filled my ears. It was a cacophony of whispers, desperate and petrified. I felt my breath hitch as figures swarmed around me, and I stumbled back, a scream escaping my lips. And that's when I saw it. A figure stepping out from the shadows, face illuminated by the house's faint glow. It was the man from before. The man stepped closer, his eyes glinting in the dim light, and I felt a surge of fear again. Was he here to help or to hurt? The stitches of my panic unraveled as he reached out a hand toward me. "Don't be afraid," he said, his voice low and rough, but there was a hint of urgency. "You need to come inside." "Why should I trust you?" I shot back, instinctively taking a step back. "What do you want from me?" "Listen, time is short," he replied, glancing over his shoulder, as if expecting something to emerge from the fog again. "There are things you don't understand, and you might still have a chance to fix them." I hesitated, everything in me screaming to run. But the wild noise outside grew louder, a crescendo of whispers that painted pictures of dread in my mind. "The woman!" I gasped, remembering the figure from moments ago. "What happened to her?" "I can't explain everything right now, but she was trying to warn you. They're after you, and they won't stop until they find you." He stepped back further into the house, inviting me to follow. "You need to make a choice. Stay out here and face them, or come inside. I can help you." The shadows in the fog shifted, looming closer. My gut twisted as I felt the weight of his words. I could hear the whispering rising to a fever pitch, a cacophony that tugged at my sanity. The figures were coming, and whatever they were, I didn't want to find out. Panic surged again, but I made my choice. I darted inside the small house, slamming the door shut behind me. The man quickly locked it, his movements precise and almost practiced. "What is happening?" I gasped as I turned to face him. "Who are you?" "I'm someone who knows way more than you do about this town," he said, wiping sweat from his brow. "This house has protections, at least for now." I took in the room, walls lined with books, their spines cracked. A flickering candle sat atop a table covered in strange symbols and maps. It felt heavy with knowledge and secrets, the air dense with something I couldn't quite name. "Why are you helping me?" I asked, desperate for clarity. "Because you have something they want," he replied, looking me in the eye. "The locket is the key, and they'll stop at nothing to take it from you." I gasped, my heart racing at the implication. I lifted the locket from my neck. Its cold metal felt heavier now. The dull glow it had held earlier pulsed faintly again, as if it were alive and conscious of my fear. "What do you mean, the key?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Let me show you," he said, urgency lacing his tone like a thread in a fraying tapestry. Just as he took a step closer, the sound of relentless pounding reverberated through the door, chilling my blood. Someone, or something, was trying to get in. "Hold on," he snapped, eyes darting toward the door. "This is just the beginning. We have to activate it before they break through." I felt my pulse quicken as I moved closer to him, ready to find out just what the locket could unlock. But with the front door rattling and whispers growing louder, I knew that our time was running out. Then everything went dark again as the candle flickered violently and went out. I stumbled back, plunged into a void without light. The only sound pressing against me was the deafening banging on the door. My heart raced. Panic clawed at my throat as I felt my way around the room. "Stay close!" the man called out, his voice slicing through the darkness. I could hardly see him, but I felt his presence close by. "We need to find the—" Suddenly, another loud crack echoed, louder this time, like fists of a giant smashing against the wood. The walls vibrated, and I clutched the locket, feeling the faint warmth spilling from its surface. "What do we do?" I whispered, desperation lacing my voice. "Focus on the locket," he said urgently. "Hold it tightly. It can—" I felt a surge of energy course through me, igniting the locket like a spark, lighting up the shadows in soft, flickering glows. Images flickered in my mind, faces, places, a chaotic swirl of moments long forgotten. Then, the man's hands gripped my shoulders. "You have to concentrate. Picture what you want to unlock. Picture escape. Escape." The word resonated deep within, but flashes of the woman in the fog danced behind my eyes. Where was she? What did she want from me? I shook my head, trying to ground myself. "Just think of safety," he urged, and I closed my eyes, imagining the space beyond the door, free from those relentless whispers. But as I pictured safety, there was a loud bang, followed by splintering wood. My eyes shot open just in time to see the door buckle under the sheer force of the impact. "Now!" he shouted, and I felt the locket vibrate against my chest. An instinct surged through me, pushing me closer to him. "I can't—" I started to protest, fear gnawing at me, but he shook his head. "Do it! It's the only way!" With sheer determination, I focused on the locket, letting all my fear channel into it. The room pulsed with energy as a bright light erupted from the locket, illuminating every corner and revealing countless symbols coming to life. A wall of energy shot out, encompassing us both. But just as the light surged, the door burst open and figures cloaked in shadow flooded into the room. Their eyes glowed with an unnatural hunger, and I could barely breathe. I felt the locket react, binding and melding with the energy swirling around us. "What's happening?" I shouted, panic clawing at my insides. "It's activated! Now! Before he could finish, the shadows collided with the barrier created by the locket. The impact sent waves of energy rippling through the room, and the force pushed me to the ground. The man scrambled to his feet, but the shadows clawed at him, wisps curling around his arms. "Fight it!" he yelled as his voice rose above the chaos. "Hold the line!" I grasped the locket tighter, feeling its warmth pulse wildly in my hand. That was when I noticed something else. There, in the shadows, a familiar face watched me, twisted in fear, the woman from the fog. Tears streamed down her cheeks, and she reached out toward me. "Help us!" she screamed, but her voice faded as the shadows snatched her away. The glowing symbols scattered in the air, chaos tightening the grip of the shadows, and I realized I had to act fast. I couldn't let them take anyone else. I braced myself once more, trying to find my strength amidst the terror. I had to protect us. I had to uncover the true power of the locket, and then I heard echoes surrounding me. "The key is you." Just then, everything shifted. The symbols on the walls rearranged, and the whispers transformed into a deafening roar, urging me to choose, fight or flight. That's when I saw it. The locket flared brilliantly, and with one final push, I closed my eyes, ready to embrace whatever came next. I felt the energy surge as the locket's light enveloped me. It was a blinding brightness, pushing back the shadows and forcing them to retreat, if only for a moment. Those twisted faces faltered, their glowing eyes narrowing as the burst of light filled the room. But then, as soon as it started, it flickered. Panic shot through me. I was losing control. "Stay with me! Focus!" The man's voice cut through the chaos again, snapping me back to the present. I glanced at him, his determination fierce despite the encroaching darkness trying to pull him under. What did he mean, focus? I didn't know where to begin. My heart thundered in my chest, a frantic reminder of the terror around us. I thought of the woman's face again, the plea in her eyes. "What do you want from me?" I shouted into the void, hoping my words could pierce their gloom. "Don't speak to them," the man warned, struggling against the grasp of a shadow. "They feed on your fear. You need to think about rescue. Think about where you want to be." I thought of sunlight, of warmth, of escape. But all I could see in my mind was the woman, her image flooding back to me, drawing me into a web of confusion. "You have to help me," I yelled, feeling ridiculous for addressing a specter. In response, the shadows swarmed like a dark tide, and I felt their cold tendrils grab at my ankles. They were hungry. They wanted in. "Now!" the man yelled again, and now there was urgency in his tone. "Activate it! Use the locket!" I squeezed it tight and forced my mind to clear. I envisioned the street outside, filled with sunlight and the laughter of children. I yearned for safety, for peace. I almost felt the warm breeze brush against my face. The locket pulsed in my palm, the energy swelling and becoming a searing force. But then, something shifted. The symbols surrounding me began to morph into strange shapes, and I glimpsed a new image beginning to emerge. An old, worn house. "What is this?" I wondered out loud. The man's eyes widened in recognition. "You're channeling a memory. It's tied to your past. Focus on it. It must hold the key." My mind raced, trying to piece together fragments of my own life. The locket surged with energy, and I saw shadows ripple, struggling against the light. I focused harder. I remembered warm summers spent in my grandmother's house, the scent of baked bread wafting through the air. "Break through!" the man shouted, fighting against the darkness. "Let it guide you!" I felt an explosive wave of warmth wash over me. It spread from the locket, pushing against the shadows and illuminating the room once more. The darkness recoiled, and in that moment, I realized I could control it. But just then, I heard a noise behind me, a scraping sound. I turned, and my heart dropped. A new shadow loomed closer, larger than the others, its presence sending chills down my spine. Just as I was gaining control, a new threat emerged, looming just beyond the glow of the locket. Then everything darkened. The light flickered violently, the shadows shifted, merging and twisting around the new figure. I knew we had to fight back. I had to act fast. Fight or flight, I whispered to myself, but the answer felt distant. I prepared for whatever came next, knowing the survival of us all rested on a choice. Would I take that leap into the unknown? The scraping sound echoed again, sharper this time, cutting through the chaos like a knife. My eyes narrowed on the looming figure. It was massive, almost formless, but I sensed malice radiating from it. I could barely breathe. "Focus on the light," the man yelled, desperately trying to push back against the shadows that threatened to engulf him. I realized he was right. The locket was my only weapon. With trembling hands, I raised it again, the warm glow flickering above me. The shadows around us twisted, turning the void into a dark whirlwind. But just like that, I felt a rush of determination surge through me. I couldn't let fear control me. I thought about my grandmother's house and the comfort it brought me. "That's it!" I shouted. The image became sharp in my mind, the garden filled with daisies, the sunlight dancing on smooth wooden floors. It was safe there. The locket flared, suffusing the room with brightness. The shadows shrank back, howling in fury. I felt the ground give beneath me. I was physically floating. This light had power, more than I had ever imagined. But the larger shadow didn't back down. It loomed closer, absorbing the darkness around it. I felt an unnatural chill breeze past me. My stomach twisted with dread. Just how strong was this thing? "Keep it going," the man urged. I forced more energy into the locket, willing it to shine brighter. I had to keep this thing at bay while we figured out a way out of here. Suddenly, without warning, it lunged. I yelped and instinctively kicked out, but my foot met nothing but air. The man's voice broke through again. "We need to combine our strength. Close your eyes and amplify your thoughts to the light." "Together?" I hesitated, feeling the weight of the darkness pressing down on me. "What if—" "Do it!" he shouted, and the urgency in his voice shook me. I closed my eyes, feeling the locket pulse against my chest. I pictured the man's determined face alongside memories of my grandmother's laughter. As if sensing our combined energy, the shadows recoiled once more, but the larger figure persisted. I felt a rush of wind as panic threatened to surge back. Then, everything went dim for the briefest moment. My breath caught as the shadows pulsed, swallowing the last threads of light. I could feel the locket slipping from my fingers. "No!" I gasped, reaching out instinctively. When I regained my balance, I caught something out of the corner of my eye. A glimmer, a reflection. That's when I saw it, I thought. A small opening, barely visible, surrounded by inky darkness. "Over there!" I yelled, pointing to the glimmer. "We need to move now." The man nodded, steeling himself against the remaining shadows. With a surge of courage, I propelled myself toward the glowing opening. But as I did, the larger shadow surged again, angry and desperate, roaring like a beast denied its meal. We had to go. The locket still emanated light, but I felt it faltering against the overwhelming darkness. "Run!" the man shouted, and that single word ignited a surge of adrenaline in my veins. I dashed toward the flickering glow, the terrifying noise of the shadow's fury at our heels. The choice had to be made. Would we escape into the unknown, or be consumed once more? I sprinted toward the glimmering opening, my heart pounding in my chest. The icy breath of the shadow brushed my neck, and I forced my legs to move faster. A figure like that couldn't be held back forever. "Don't look back!" the man yelled, pushing himself forward. I could barely keep up. The light from the locket wavered and flickered, but I gritted my teeth, willing it to hold. The closer we got to the opening, the more it pulsed with an inviting warmth. Still, doubt clawed at my mind. What waited on the other side? I didn't have time to think. We needed to escape. The ground shifted beneath us. I stumbled, nearly falling, but the man grabbed my arm in time. "Keep moving." His voice was strained, but resolute, urging me onward. My determination surged once more. Suddenly, the shadows lunged again, and I could feel their frustration. I dared to glance back. The large shadow approached, its form shifting and writhing as if it were made of liquid darkness. It was furious, and I could almost hear it roar in frustration. The opening flashed brightly, then dimmed. Panic surged inside me. "It's closing!" I shouted. We had to make it. Desperation lent me speed. I pushed my legs to move faster, fear driving me forward. I could feel the weight of the darkness behind us, like fingers clawing at my back. Then, just as I could see more details of the opening, a strange sound filled the air, like a crack of thunder, but more muted, echoing deep within the shadow. I froze, fear wrapping around me. What was happening? "Don't stop! We're almost there!" the man shouted, pulling me along again. I felt the locket glow even brighter, but I wasn't sure how much longer it could last. My thoughts raced. What if the light went out before we got through? There was a shimmer in the air. It felt wrong. I glanced back again. The shadow pulsed, and in that instant I noticed the outlines of faces within it, screaming in silence. They were trapped. I gasped, realizing those weren't just shadows, they were lost souls. "We have to help them," I cried out, feeling torn. Could we really leave them? The man shook his head firmly. "If we don't get through, we'll end up like them," he urged, desperation coloring his tone. I bit my lip, the guilt haunting me, but I knew he was right. With one last push, we sprinted toward the opening. The warm glow intensified, almost pulling us in. I felt a surge of hope as I reached the threshold. But the moment we were a step away, darkness enveloped us, and a loud crack drowned out everything. My vision blurred as if I were being pulled through a thick mist. The shadows clawed at my clothes, yanking me back. I screamed, fighting against the pull. Then, just as suddenly, everything went silent. I found myself sprawled on the ground, gasping for breath as the swirling shadows spun around me. The man lay beside me, looking just as bewildered, but we were no longer in the dark room. I blinked hard. We were outside, but everything felt off. The sky above us was a churning mix of bizarre colors, and the air buzzed with an odd energy. I pushed myself up and looked around, my heart racing again. "Where are we?" I whispered, dread curling in my stomach. But before the man could respond, a shadow darted past. My heart dropped. Whatever that thing was, it wasn't done with us yet. I scrambled to my feet, adrenaline fueling every movement. The man followed suit, scanning our surroundings. Shadows flickered at the edges of our vision, swirling just beyond reach. The colors in the sky pulsed in a disorienting rhythm, creating an unsettling contrast against the terrors I had just escaped. "What just happened?" I gasped, trying to catch my breath. I don't know," the man replied, his voice shaky but edged with determination. "Whatever we activated, it's changed the landscape. The light from the locket must have disrupted the binding between worlds." The realization hit me like a jolt. Our escape had had consequences. The weight of what we had just done settled heavily on my chest. But the shadows, they're still here. Are we safe? "Safe isn't a guarantee," he said, eyes narrowing as he pointed toward the horizon, where dark figures melded into the swirling chaos. "They're drawn to the energy from the locket. We need to keep moving." I glanced at the locket in my hand. It still pulsed with a soft glow, but it felt like a flicker in a raging storm. "But where do we go?" "There!" he shouted, gesturing toward a nearby hill cresting the fog. At the summit, a spectral light warmed the dark canvas, casting an inviting glow. If we can reach that, we might find shelter or answers. We moved as quickly as we could, navigating the uneven ground. It felt like we were running through a half-formed dream, the horizon blurring into shapes that morphed and twisted, our surroundings a living entity alive with whispers. As we climbed, I could hear them clearer now, desperate cries woven with an edge of rage. Were these the souls we had glimpsed earlier? The man looked at me, determination digging deep in his gaze. "We can't stop. No matter what we see, stay focused." As we crested the hill, the light at the top grew more defined. I hesitated a moment, feeling something pull at me from beyond the veil of shadows. Figures flitted at the edge of my sight, their shapes eerily familiar. The Edwards, Mrs. Yates, the woman from the fog, faces twisted with fear and desperation. "Mark," the man urged, his voice breaking through my reverie. "We have to go." The pleading in his tone jolted me back to reality. I turned, forcing my legs to obey. Together, we sprinted toward the glowing light. But just as we reached the crest, a sudden chill swept down from the shadows. A vortex of darkness surged from below, swirling to meet us, and the shadow figures writhed at our feet, insistent and frantic, their whispers now a cacophony of soul-wrenching cries. The man stumbled slightly, and my heart raced at the thought of losing him. In one breath, the darkness clawed at my body, another pulling at my soul, and then there was nothing but the relentless haze of chaos rapidly closing in. I made a split-second decision. I lifted the locket high, feeling its warmth surge in response to my plea. "No!" I shouted into the fray, hoping my voice could reach the depths of those lost souls. "We're not leaving you behind!" The locket burst forth a blinding light, forcing the shadows to recoil. The whispers rose in pitch, merging into anguished screams. For a moment, I could see the faces clearly, my neighbors, lost and begging for release from whatever torment they were enduring. "Mark!" the man's voice cut through the maelstrom. "You cannot save them if we perish. Now please!" His urgency gripped me, igniting a spark of resolve against the shadows that threatened to swallow us whole. I met his gaze, realizing we didn't even know where this path led, what it truly was, or how much control we had over it. Was it a gateway to salvation, or merely another step deeper into the dark? But the energy pulsing through the locket was undeniable, and it seemed to resonate with something inside me, a memory, an acknowledgement of resilience. So I took a deep breath. What if the light is the only way? Before I could contemplate the consequences, bringing this energy forth in a way I could barely comprehend, the wind whipped around us, and with a final surge, I plunged the locket into the ground. Light exploded from it, a radiant wave that washed over everything, illuminating the faces of the lost souls that hovered just beyond reach. I could barely hear the gasps of recognition amidst the storm. The shadows recoiled, and I felt an odd nostalgia for everyone I had known. But as quickly as it began, the light faded, the colors in the sky dulling. I felt the ground shift beneath me again, shadows swirling back, relentless and hungry. "Run!" the man shouted once more. We scrambled to move again, the weight of abandonment heavy on my heart. I hoped, as we raced forward into whatever awaited us, that the choices we made would lock away the darkness for good, or that somehow we'd find a way back to those lost souls. As we reached the edge of the light, everything froze for an agonizing moment. Time stood still. I couldn't shake the feeling we were standing on a fine line dividing two worlds. But as we hastily made our way forward, the questions remained. What had we unleashed? What were the boundaries of shadows and light, of life and loss? I headed into the unknown, the flickering light behind me a painful reminder of the courage it took to march into uncertainty. I could feel the tension in the air, the sweet taste of hope intermingling with bitter regrets. Wherever we were headed, I held on to the resolve that we hadn't seen the last of the dark, but we might one day find the courage to face it again.